When I close my eyes and think about my childhood, the first face that comes to mind is not my parents, but my grandfather. To me, he was larger than life. He wasn't just a man with wealth, connections, and power. He was the kind of person who could walk into a room and silence it without ever raising his voice. He built his fortune brick by brick through sweat, vision, and discipline. Oh, 41 million was the number everyone whispered behind his back. For me, though, it wasn't about the money. It was about the stories he shared, the lessons he taught me while walking through his garden, the way he reminded me, true wealth is not in the vault, but in the heart. But the rest of my family never heard those words. To them, Grandpa was a bank, a key to luxury vacations, designer suits, and fancy cars. They smiled in his presence, but their eyes were always on his wallet. When Grandpa passed away, the atmosphere at the funeral was thick, not with grief, but with calculation. My cousins wore black, but I swear their eyes glistened more at the thought of inheritance than at the memory of his love. They were already dividing the fortune in whispers before the will was even read. I sat quietly. I wasn't expecting much. Grandpa had always been closer to me than anyone else. But I knew how easily people could twist love into greed. I wasn't hungry for his money. I was hungry for his wisdom, his approval, his love. The ticket was to Monaco, a place of wealth, luxury, and secrets. I boarded the plane, my cousins still mocking me behind my back, their laughter ringing in my ears. Look at her, chasing a piece of paper while we enjoy our millions. But as the plane soared, my mind drifted back to Grandpa's words. True wealth is not in the vault, but in the heart. Sometimes the path to treasure begins with a journey, not a number. When I landed in Monaco, the beauty of the place struck me. The glittering harbor, the yachts like floating palaces, the air heavy with perfume and money. I felt out of place, a poor traveler in a city built for the rich. Then the letter inside the envelope revealed itself. Grandpa's handwriting, strong and steady, spoke to me from beyond the grave. My dearest child, if you are reading this, it means you were brave enough to trust me. Your cousins believe they inherited wealth. What they don't know is that I hid the true inheritance, the legacy that cannot be squandered. Meet the man waiting for you in Monaco. He will reveal the truth. My hands trembled. Who was this man? What secret had Grandpa entrusted me with? The day of the will reading arrived. The lawyer sat at the long oak table, the air thick with anticipation. My cousins leaned forward, their expensive pens poised over their notepads, as though they were making business deals. I sat at the far end unnoticed, like a shadow in my own family. The lawyer began reading. Properties, accounts, stocks, all listed with meticulous care. The total sum of the inheritance, tall 41 million. My cousins erupted in delighted whispers, smirks tugging at their lips. They were splitting the fortune. My name came last. The lawyer cleared his throat and read. To my granddaughter, the the one who knows the value of simplicity, I leave something far greater than money. A one-way plane ticket. I followed the directions in my grandfather's letter until I reached the terrace of a quiet cafe overlooking the marina. The city around me was buzzing with life. Expensive cars humming through narrow streets. Waves crashing against yachts owned by billionaires. Waiters gliding between tables carrying glasses of champagne. And there, seated at a small table with a cup of coffee and an air of quiet authority, was the man I was meant to meet. He looked to be in his late 60s. His suit was tailored, but subtle. Not flashy like the other men around us. His eyes locked on me the moment I approached, as though he had been waiting his entire life. "You must be her," he said with a gentle smile. "Your grandfather's favorite." Something inside me tightened. "Who are you?" "My name is Henry Beaumont," he replied. "Your grandfather's oldest friend, business partner, confidant, and in many ways, his brother. He trusted me with something the rest of your family could never understand." Henry reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather folder. Inside were documents, papers that looked official, stamped and notarized. He slid them across the table. "This, my dear, is the part of the inheritance your cousins don't know exists." I opened the folder. My breath caught. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, real estate deeds across Europe. All in my name. Not just millions, but an empire. A fortune far beyond the 41 million my cousins had split. I looked up, stunned. Why me?" Henry leaned forward. "Because your grandfather knew the truth. He knew your cousins would squander their wealth on parties and greed. But you carried his values. You listened to his wisdom. He saw in you not just an heir, but a guardian. He wanted to test your faith, your trust, your courage, and you passed." I sat frozen. My cousins were celebrating their millions, mocking my ticket, while I sat here holding the keys to something far greater. Weeks passed. My cousins' lives exploded in headlines, luxury cars, wild parties, scandals. They paraded their inheritance, peacocks, each trying to outshine the other. Their laughter echoed across social media. And yes, my name was dragged through their jokes. "She got a ticket," they said. "We got millions." What they didn't know was that while they mocked me, I was sitting across negotiating tables in Monaco, guided by Henry. My grandfather had left me not just money, but education. Henry taught me the business world, introduced me to partners, and handed me the blueprint of my grandfather's empire. But the sweetest twist came months later. My cousins discovered their millions weren't what they thought. Hidden debts, poor investments, and reckless spending drained their accounts. They fought each other like wolves, blaming, suing, and betraying one another. Their wealth, once a river, dried up into dust. And me, I was silent, watching, building, learning. One day, one of my cousins called me. His voice cracked with desperation. We need help. Could you lend us something? Just until we get back on our feet," I remembered their laughter at the will reading, their mockery at my plane ticket. I remembered the sting of humiliation, the ache in my chest. But I also remembered my grandfather's voice. True wealth is not in the vault, but in the heart. I spoke calmly. You laughed at my inheritance, but it turns out it was the only one that mattered. I will not give you money, but I will give you advice. Use your downfall as your teacher. Maybe then you'll learn what Grandpa tried to teach us all. Years have passed since that day in Monaco. My cousins disappeared into obscurity, their names forgotten by the circles they once fought to impress. But me, I honored my grandfather's vision. The empire he built is now under my care. Properties across Europe, companies employing thousands, investments that touch lives. But more than that, I live by his wisdom. I travel not to flaunt, but to learn. I build not to boast. The plane ticket was never a joke. It was a test, a symbol. It carried me not just to Monaco, but to my destiny. It carried me to the truth that wealth without wisdom is destruction, and humility without greed is power. To everyone listening, maybe life has handed you something that feels small, embarrassing, or worthless. Maybe people mock you for what you have, or laugh at your simplicity. But remember this: sometimes the smallest gift hides the greatest treasure. Sometimes the road that looks like a dead end is the very path to your destiny. My cousins split 41 million and mocked me. But my grandfather gave me something they could never buy: purpose. And that, my friends, is the greatest inheritance of all. Do not let betrayal define you. Do not let mockery wound you. Let every insult become fuel, every heartbreak become wisdom, and every loss become the seed of a greater victory. Because revenge, real revenge, is not shouting, not fighting, not breaking others down. Real revenge is standing taller, living wiser, and proving them wrong simply by thriving. I was mocked for a plane ticket. Now I own an empire, and so can you.